Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Is the Devil's Punch Bowl? Are there puckwudgies in Massachusetts? How do you make a paranormal-themed television production that actually works?
Greetings and welcome to the 449th edition of Behind the Paranormal.
849th.
I just wanted fours in there. I'm very sorry.
Time travel.
849th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I was only off by 400 episodes. I'm Ben, and those legendary questions came from my co-host and partner in the paranormal adventures and dad, and Happy Father's Day, Paul.
Oh, thank you, Ben.
And today we bring you a familiar guest on a new subject, and we welcome your calls today. The number is 401-766-1240. That is from anywhere, or email Paul at behindtheparanormal.com, or you can also contact us via Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram for those who are a little phone shy.
Aleksandar Petakov is familiar to our listeners as a frequent guest, an occasional co-host, and an invaluable participant in some of our own paranormal hijinks. Way beyond that, Alec leads an exotic life as a globe-trotting filmmaker specializing in Bigfoot and other disconcerting creatures. He was born in 1993 in South Africa during the last year of apartheid to parents who had fled civil war in the former Yugoslavia, and the family did not have a boring life. He grew up in the United States and has always been interested in global events, history, the outdoors, and adventuring. A 2015 graduate of Quinnipiac University in Connecticut with a BA in Communications with minors in History and Political Science, he is the new executive producer of the series Chasing Legends. Nash Hoover is the host and co-creator of Chasing Legends. Ever since he was a wee lad, Nash has researched stories of strange creatures and other weird phenomena from all over the world. From his official bio, quote, with a knack for adventure and a passion to seek the unknown, he isn't afraid to push the limits of himself and his team to find the truth. From the coldest tundra to the hottest desert, Nash will travel far and wide to get to the bottom of any case thrown at him, unquote. Well, I hope nobody throws the flying fish of Jakarta at him, at least not till the end of the show.
So Aleksandar Petakov and Nash Hoover, welcome to Behind the Paranormal.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
How you doing, guys? How's everything?
Just another glorious day in the New England neighborhood. So I guess we'll start off with something is a seemingly simple question, but we can expand on it as time goes on. So what is Chasing Legends, and what legends have you chased?
We'll start with Aleksandar.
So I think actually Nash, since he created this.
Oh, that's right. That's true. He has more seniority. So Nash, take it away.
So Chasing Legends was a idea that kind of came to myself and my co-creator Caitlin Keeley back in the mid-spring of 2013. We both were interested in the paranormal, both were interested in, both cryptids and ghosts, and I was more cryptid stuff, she was more ghosts, and we felt that there was a need for a show like this, a genuine, honest approach to paranormal research, cryptid research, and so we kind of put this idea together, and we from there slowly developed it. We came up with a name, we came up with a concept, we put together a small team and just kind of started filming stuff, and here we are getting ready to film our first proper season.
Mm-hmm. So, Aleksandar, your thoughts? When did you, I'll ask specifically, when did you join the production team as executive producer?
Sure. So basically, I think it was this past winter, Nash and I started communicating. They were planning to do a episode about the puckwudgie here in New England and Massachusetts. So he messaged me. We'd been friends online. Similar sort of passions. We're both young guys that are interested in this sort of stuff, and that can often be tough in a community where there's a lot of gatekeeping and older folks, even unlike you, Paul, and others, who kind of who almost feel threatened by new people on the scene bringing new ideas and new things forward. So Nash just kind of messaged me and was wondering about the puckwudgie and if I was willing to help, and I was like, yeah, absolutely, and I will put you in contact with people who know more about that subject specifically. So they came out here to Massachusetts, kind of ironically, right before the whole coronavirus thing kicked off. I think it was 2 or 3 days before Massachusetts declared a state of emergency. So we got that last sort of glimpse of normalcy. And we filmed the episode. We had a great time, some great adventures. And then I think we just started kind of talking about, well, if I was to come on as an investigator or even one of the executive producers alongside Nash, and I really liked the idea. I liked kind of the crew and what was being done with covering the subject. So that's kind of where that started, and here we are now, just sort of concluding our Kickstarter fundraising for this season 1 with some pretty amazing plans for the rest of the season coming up.
So what productions have there been so far? It's a question for either of you, and what have they been about? You mentioned the Pukwudgie one, which is the first time I met Nash.
So our very first, we have, like I said, we've been doing this for 7 years, so we have a few things on YouTube that are not the best quality, but they kind of serve as a way to kind of get people in the know of who we are. So the first episode we ever shot was a ghost hunting episode, actually. As a local spot here in Minnesota, kind of a local, a lot of local legend around it. Kind of, it's one of those places where the local kids would go and get a good scare. But I had always heard that there was actual genuine activity there, so we went and kind of filmed like a test episode, is what we called it. It was something that was never meant to kind of see the light of day, and we went and filmed kind of our whole concept of kind of how we wanted everything to look, and we did our investigation and had some pretty crazy things happen, so we decided to put it out there, and that became our first episode. The second one we've done the Lake Pepin monster here in Minnesota, which is pretty much Minnesota's Loch Ness champ. It's supposed to be kind of a plesiosaur-esque creature in Lake Pepin. That one we had a pretty interesting sighting, or we saw something that we couldn't explain. We're not quite sure what it was. I'm not going to say it was the monster, but it was definitely something weird that kind of coincided with sightings in that area. Then we kind of took a few-year break from filming. It was so to kind of work on our craft, and I worked on some other projects to kind of learn the more fundamentals of filmmaking and doing a project like this and how to do it correctly. And then in 2018, we kind of came back and shot probably our best episode to date, which was our Devil's Punch Bowl episode, which is a location in Wisconsin that is just a super weird area. We weren't really investigating any one thing specifically. It was kind of just the whole area as a whole, and there's balls of light reported. There's weird sounds, weird paranormal things, and then the people are claiming that there's like gnome-like creatures that live in this punch bowl. So we went there. It just was a super weird experience, a super weird place. It was like super misty when we were down there, so we could barely see. So it really added to the eeriness and the mysteriousness of the location. And we had a lot of things that happened to us that we were able to kind of, I guess, almost debunk or explain. That kind of again coincided with a lot of the reports in the area. And then now we filmed the Pukwudgie episode back in March, and that's looking really good, both what we have, and that'll kind of be a part of our official first season that will come out next winter.
Okay. Ben has a question.
So, in my opinion, I had the fun experience of going to film school, although my degree is in sound design and did a lot of work for production sound. But I had the sort of weird experience of having to do a lot of media criticism, but in a very sort of broad sense. So I'm not attempting to criticize it. What I'm trying to do is explain where I'm coming from. So here we are, documentary filmmaking, right? It's kind of a fun thing because it's almost like a science experiment, right? you start with a hypothesis, and then you try your best to prove or either disprove said hypothesis. So with this series, what is your hypothesis?
So our main approach for these cases that we explore on each episode is we kind of look into more of, we don't go into it trying to prove if it is or isn't real. We go into it, could it be real? So we explore like every aspect that could go into into these creatures, and from the biological aspects, the cultural associations. We cover everything. We look into everything. We do solid research and try to kind of reach a conclusion based on the research, but as well as actually getting out into the field, putting ourselves in the shoes of the people that actively look for these creatures and have seen these creatures and couldn't explain. And then from that, we kind of basically try to see if there's anything, any known animals in the area that could be misidentified, or if we do end up having our own experiences that we can't explain, then we kind of go from there. But yeah, really our approach is exploring if there's any real possibilities of these animals existing, and or at the same time what they could be instead.
Nash, I wanted to ask you, this area in Wisconsin, is this by any chance what Linda Godfrey has called the Jefferson County Square of Weirdness? With everything you've described and more.
I mean, Wisconsin is a weird state. I know a lot of investigators from there that, pretty much tell me like, oh, you got to check out this, you got to check out here, you got to go here, and like you could do an entire 5-season series on just Wisconsin, and you would have interesting content every episode. But I think the area she's talking about is more southeast of the state, I believe, because I know there is a lot of the Devil's Punch Bowl is near Menominee, Wisconsin, which is on the west side of the state.
Okay. All right, just curious about that.
Yeah, I think the area she's talking about is more in her area of the southeast.
Now, Alexander knows better than most people about crossover phenomena. When he's been with us, he's part of our gang in Pennsylvania, which has been investigating that area since 2016. And it was about a year ago, a little more than, a year and a month, that we had, the amazing UFO sighting that we all had, and then two of us have had Bigfoot encounters down there, and you name it. And we have neighborhood meetings with people, 30 and 35 people who are talking about all the things they've seen. There was an excellent interview that was filmed by Alexander and Charles Credo, another one of our friends, who's a great interviewer, with 3 generations of a family. So what are your thoughts on, are you going to get into in Chasing Legends crossover phenomena, or are you just going to concentrate on just one theme per episode? It's very difficult to pin this stuff down if you're doing crossover stuff. What are your thoughts on that, Alexander?
Sure. Yeah, I think, first of all, I was going to mention it's amazing that was almost a year ago, and I have a few more interviews from that year with other folks that we interviewed there at the restaurant regarding the Bigfoot stuff. I'm hoping to release that at some point this summer. So I think with the crossover phenomena, it's pretty interesting. Obviously, the first official episode of this season that we filmed was the Pukwudgie, which happens in the Bridgewater Triangle, which of course is another one of these areas. So I think you can't really talk about the Pukwudgie without at least peripherally mentioning the fact that the Triangle has all this other phenomena going on, whether there's other cryptids or ghosts, strange human activity. And I won't go too much into detail about that, since I think that plays part in kind of the way we investigated, but I think you have to look at crossover phenomena in some other cases. I mean, some of the other locations we're going to look into, there may not be necessarily something that's paranormal in nature, but there are other phenomena. I think, as Nash mentioned, natural phenomena. We're going to be in areas that have a lot of diverse types of wildlife across the country. that in one location will vary very greatly to another one. So you can have something, that may be a natural phenomena that you're just not used to living in the Northeast or living in Wisconsin as you would be to Arizona or Louisiana or wherever the case may be. So I think that's what's interesting, and that's something that really drew me to the show, was the kind of the approach of not really going in saying, well, this is a real creature, we're just here to get evidence of it. It's just sort of an examination of a particular cryptid, and that's the focus. So while while we do film in the Bridgewater Triangle and Freetown in this area, the Pukwudgie is the main focus of a Pukwudgie episode, and so will the other creatures as well. And I like that sort of level-headed approach. And for me, most of my documentaries have been just documenting a particular case or a story and really laying out all the evidence. I'm not present in the films. It's done with the presence of a narrator. It's more of an putting all the facts out on the table and letting people make up their own minds, whereas this is a way to kind of step out from that, change it up a little bit, and say, well, no, this is what I really believe, and this is what, the conclusion that I've come out taking from this, and, some of the other team members may have totally different ideas about what we've run into or what we haven't run into, and I really like that. So for me, it's just a little bit different than what I'm used to doing as a documentary filmmaker, and now I'm more in the investigator role as well, and that's obviously something that Nash has been doing for a while. So it's just kind of fun for me to switch it up a little bit and be involved in something like that. And like I said, that's what drew me into the project a lot as well.
Sure. We have a question from our very faithful listener in Bogota, Colombia, Peter. And Ben, if you would take it away.
Sure thing. So he starts off with, Alec and Nash, congratulations on your new show. I watched the first 2 episodes. I noticed that you didn't use a cold open or a teaser at the beginning. As most know, this is a widespread technique of opening with some dramatic clip for a few minutes before the titles to grab the audience. Yes, everybody is doing it, but it is effective. Would you consider adding teasers to the opening? This could be the most dramatic few seconds of a reenactment or witness account.
Well, our first, our Hell's Tunnel episode had like a bit of a kind of a kickoff teaser of the overall episode. Our Lake Pepin episode did not, but then our Devil's Punch Bowl episode did. Our Devil's Punch Bowl episode, we did actually set up, or at least tried to set up as much as we could as an actual show, where we had a opening narration introducing the show. We had a somewhat of a title sequence, and then it kicked into the episode. So yeah, that's something that we are going to keep doing, which is each episode will have its own mini kind of teaser to get people kind of pumped up and at least give people an idea of what to expect. And then we are also going to cut together a more traditional show introduction that will be me narrating with a montage of clips, and then it'll kick into a actual edited together title sequence that will carry through the whole series. And so these next episodes, pretty much all of our episodes from Pukwudgie on are gonna look and sound like an actual TV show.
Okay. Now, I want to get a little deeper into some meat and potato questions here about a number of things, but before we do that, is this going to be on Animal Planet or YouTube, or where? Where can people see it?
This will be all available on YouTube.
Okay. Well, that's the future of TV, if not the present. YouTube.
Yeah.
I think that we all realize that some of these expeditions, and particularly looking for cryptids, can at times lead to the unexpected and perhaps danger. Okay? I'm thinking of, and Alexander's familiar with this, that my own experience, Bigfoot encounter in the Pennsylvania Triangle was very positive. A little girl who has yet to work up the courage to talk to us from the area had a horrific experience, like 100 yards from where I had mine. So, I mean, what steps do you take to protect your crew? And has there ever been a time when you have felt threatened or have had to leave an area out of fear? That's a question for both of you. If you want to start with that.
So we especially with these cases that we have coming up for our first season, we Alex and I have really done our due diligence of looking into everywhere we're going to go. What are the known dangerous animals? What sort of environmental dangers are we going to have to face, so that we can sit down with everybody and be like, hey, we need to, we've never been in an area like this before. We need to make sure that we're all on our toes the whole time. No one goes off alone. No one, this and that. So we're really taking the safety side of things seriously with these next few, just because of we're going into environments that we've never faced before. As far as having to leave locations, we haven't really had anything where we had to leave. Nothing where we really felt threatened. The Hell's Tunnel one was kind of interesting, just because stuff kind of started to pop off and we weren't prepared for it. So that we kind of left as things started to kind of increase in that aspect. But other than that, we really had nothing yet where we felt that we had to get out of there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Alexander?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, both of us have spent a fair amount of time in the outdoors, of course, and that's one of the things we'll be dealing with, especially in some of the upcoming episodes, is something like Massachusetts, when we were in the Bridgewater Triangle. I don't think there was as much of a natural threat, so to speak, from animals as there would have been from people, especially in the Freetown forest, famous for serial murder and satanic rituals and that sort of stuff. We were definitely wary of that, and if we were to be approached by anybody, of course, we would. Luckily, we're in a large group of people, so I don't think not a large group, but there was a crew of 5-6 of us at a time, so I don't think that we would really have that feeling. But if there was a situation where somebody's life was in danger or somebody was threatened, we would probably get out of there immediately. That's very important, putting the safety of your crew, because we're all relying on each other essentially for safety. I mean, even being up on a cliff area, you want to make sure nobody's getting too close to the edge or trying to take the extra mile to get that shot. It's not worth it in terms of the risk. That's what a drone and that sort of stuff is for. We can risk the drone's life over somebody in the crew. But yeah, that's what I think is so unique. And we will mention, Nash, I'm sure we'll talk about all of the upcoming episodes, but each one really presents a totally different type of environmental threat or danger, because they're just such diverse areas of the country. We're talking, completely different biomes and environments in each and every one. So what you see in southern Massachusetts, in the Bridgewater Triangle area during March, where we have snow on the ground, is going to be a lot different from some of the other areas.
Okay. Now, where have you filmed so far? How far have you gone geographically? On the other side of the half hour, I want to get into something else, but where have you been?
So I am based out of southern Minnesota. So a lot of what we've filmed up until a few years ago was filmed, within Minnesota, Wisconsin, pretty much places we could drive to. We have done some research and small filming in Ireland back in 2018, and then obviously Massachusetts, and then so really this year will be the kind of first time that we're really branching out and getting out of the Midwest and exploring some of these deeper stories and filming some better content.
Okay. How often do you speak with local residents in these areas who've had experience, such as the people in Pennsylvania in our case?
Yeah, that's definitely pretty often. I mean, I think that's one of the most important things. And we talk to people who are not only just residents of the areas, but people who investigate. If we're going in to look at the Pukwudgie, we're not going to, even though I'm in New England, I'm not certainly, I don't research the Pukwudgie or the Triangle exclusively, so that's why we reached out to people like yourself, Paul, and others who are more kind of knowledgeable about the history of the area and what's been going on, and we talked to locals as well. I mean, I think it was interesting when we were there, I just struck up a conversation with, a gas station attendant and people. We talked to them in a seafood restaurant in Fall River, just kind of gauging their interest or what they know about the subject, because I think you never know what people will tell you, and we definitely got some surprising answers from some of the folks about some of the stuff that's been going on in that area. So it's very important to talk to locals, absolutely, and we'll continue to do that. And Part of it is we plan out ahead of time, who we're going to talk to in terms of if there's local scientists or local institutions or even researchers that specify in that monster, we'll set up a time to interview them. But part of the fun is also, while on location, just sort of randomly striking up a conversation with people. I've found even in some of my previous films that's been one of the most interesting ways to get in touch with locals who maybe haven't ever shared their story, or if you were to reach out to them, would you want to do an interview for a TV show or documentary, they might not be willing. But if you're just kind of casually stirring up a conversation, that's one way to find some extra leads. So that's definitely something we'll plan on doing going forward on each of the episodes.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll take our bottom of the hour break now, and on the other side we'll have some more questions for our wonderful guests, Aleksandar Petakov and Nash Hoover of Chasing Legends. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM in New England's beautiful Blackstone River Valley. We'll be right back.
The night is alive. Join us and take a walk on the weird side when you tune in to The Kingdom of Nye, hosted by Heather Wade, the finest in late night talk. Listen live free weeknights starting at 9 p.m. Pacific time at thekingdomofnye.com, talkstreamlive.com, and the Paranormal Radio app. Wanna take a ride?
Local and live at 99.5 FM.
And welcome back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON Radio. And our guests, Aleksandar Petakov and Nash Hoover of Chasing Legends. So, gentlemen, in the issue of puckwudgies, that word's been coming up, and just so if anybody doesn't know what they are who's listening, they are supposed to be little people who are not necessarily prominent in a lot of these areas. However, in the Bridgewater Triangle and in the New England and Eastern New York Hudson Valley, they do tend to crop up in local legends and in the legends of the First Nations. So that's what we're talking about. And the documentary that has been done and is being prepared now has to do with that. So in your talks, gentlemen, with people in that vicinity, which is within our listening area here, so people will be interested, did you get any more stories of puckwudgies other than what I gave you in talking with the local folks?
We had a few, because when we were actually out filming out in Freetown, before we actually came and spoke to you, Paul, we had there were some local kids that were walking out to the Sonnet Ledge as we were leaving, and we just kind of as a joke said, watch out for the puckwudgies or whatever, and they're like, hey, that's like the second time we've heard that today. So, but other than that, a lot of the people that we talked to then when we were out there kind of spoke more of the cult and the satanic stuff out there rather than the puckwudgie stuff, which was really interesting, and it brought a whole new level and avenue of us to kind of explore when it came to that stuff.
There's another place that is well known that has, and it's not so well known that there is a lot of cult activity, and that's Rendlesham Forest in England. And a lot of people don't realize that that's a real center of occult activity, as well as the UFO thing and Yeti, as they call it, et cetera, et cetera. So, how do you know when you're interviewing someone? And this is something, I've always been aware of. How do you know whether they're pulling your leg or whether they're really being honest? Because, they might see a chance to have fun with you and get on camera and all this stuff. What do you say about that?
Well, we really research the people that we seek out to speak to really make sure that they are, at least as genuine as they appear to be. If we get somebody that's telling the exact same story as somebody else, then we're probably not going to ask them. But if we get somebody that, is known, is a known researcher that is known to put in the legwork and and is well known to be an expert or the right person to talk to in a certain case, we obviously reach out to them. And then obviously too, if we're looking for people that eyewitnesses. Usually we get our eyewitnesses from those experts. We reach out to them. Hey, do you have anybody that's willing to speak to us that has talked to you? And they will usually put us in touch with those people. So that way we're kind of getting, we're getting people that they vouch for,
Right.
that they've already cleared. But sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you just kind of have to, trust what someone's saying or take it with a grain of salt. I mean, we go into every case that we do with some level of skepticism. So you kind of have to take everything, even what the experts say, with a grain of salt. And but that just comes down to, the work that we put in. We're not just researching, we're not just interviewing somebody, taking what they say as 100% truth and then calling it a day. We take what they say into account, and then we discuss it as a team and kind of add in our own we discuss as a team,
Okay.
and go from there.
All
But
right.
yeah, we really try to research the people that we speak to, so that way we're not getting just Joe Blow off the street that wants 5 minutes of fame.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
If I could just add to that,
Sure.
what I mentioned before as well, just about kind of striking up conversations with people. I think once a camera's involved, once there's that implication, maybe that might lead somebody to want to, like Nash just said, get their 5 minutes of fame. But what I think was interesting, if you're just sort of, at a gas station or in a grocery store, and just kind of talk to somebody that's in a local area that maybe this legend exists in, you just kind of, have you heard any stories about this? Do you know what it is? They may be more likely to just kind of either tell you it's complete, crock of baloney, or just actually tell you a story, maybe be a little honest about it, because a lot of times with these cases, if maybe they're interested in it as a local, they don't have many people to talk to about it perhaps, they kind of have a moment where they want to talk to you, but you can usually tell pretty quickly whether or not somebody is just sort of pulling your leg, which I think is interesting. So that's something I've experienced as well in previous productions on my own, just people just, if they make something up, you can kind of tell right away that it's not exactly very credible, especially if you've done your research on the case. And like Nash said, I think one of the better ways to do it in terms of eyewitnesses and that sort of thing is just talking to people who can vouch for particular eyewitnesses and that sort of thing. But I do still think there is value in talking to just people as sort of a normal guy on the street, just asking a question, what is this local legend? Maybe they'll tell you, oh, it's a story and it's all just kind of made up for the tourists, or maybe they'll give you some interesting answers, and that's what I think we go for, is those interesting answers. And if that develops into something, then absolutely be happy to use that going forward. But otherwise, like Nash said, you have to have a healthy dose of skepticism. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, Alexander, you brought up a really good point when we started off the show, that it is very hard to break into any paranormal community, really, especially if you're under the age of 45. It is for whatever reason, nobody just takes you seriously. So what has, if any, has there been a general sort of response from the community on the production so far? And if so, positive, negative, nothing, what's it been so far?
Well, I was brought up by the godfathers of local paranormal research in the Midwest, which is the Backroads Lore guys, which is Chad Lewis, Kevin Nielsen, Noah Voss. All of them really took me under their wing, especially Chad Lewis, and showed me the ropes, and it helped me be a better researcher, a better investigator, really showing me where to go, what not to do, and this and that. So I really lucked out with having good mentors that have been in the field for a long time and have really sealed their credibility. But yeah, overall response with the series, I haven't had anything that was really negative. Everyone sees how we approach everything and finds it refreshing, and they see that we're genuine researchers. Actually, we're really looking for answers and not just trying to over glorify these stories or make them into something they don't need to be. And so overall, we've had really good response from the older members of the community coming into it.
Okay.
Definitely. I think, just to add on to that, I think it's absolutely, I came up in a similar way that as, a young person in the scene, oftentimes some people find you as a threat, and I've talked about that with other folks like Nash as well, who are kind of younger in the scene. they think you're threatening them or you're trying to take over the throne or whatever, and the only really way to prove yourself is just to put in the hard work, do your due diligence, and just put out good stuff. And I think that's something that as well other like Small Town Monsters and other groups I've had the pleasure of working with, yourselves, Paul and Ben, we kind of just make our own path. If people don't want to work with us or even acknowledge us, that's fine. We're going to do our own thing, and we're going to be acknowledged regardless, because we're putting this content out ultimately because we care about the subjects. We're interested in them. We actually want to do the research. We're not just doing it to get famous or to get TV contracts or whatever. That's not really the goal at the end of the day, I think. So I think we try to work with everybody. If they don't want to work with us, so be it. But we just put this stuff out there because there's an audience that likes it, and we've gotten fantastic response. I mean, our Kickstarter, which we've had going for just the past month, we have 3 days left, and we're already ahead of the goal by a substantial amount that we had set at. So I think there's been a really good response. And to add on as well, I think Nash has been kind of in the Midwest. He's sort of been establishing himself, and I've been here in the East and working with other groups as well and sort of establishing myself. And I noticed a lot of people were very excited when they saw the two of us kind of come together, and it was almost like a joining of forces, which I think is awesome, because we are covering areas that are out of the spots that we normally cover in the Midwest and the East Coast, respectively. So I think there's been a fantastic response, and we haven't really gotten anything super negative, and people know that we're both stand-up guys, and we can handle our own. So I think for the most part, people are looking forward to it, and if they're not, I mean, whatever, we're just going to keep going. It doesn't really matter to us.
Okay, excellent. Now, in the course of your work, we'll start with Nash here. In the course of your work, Nash, what have you actually seen or experienced, heard, smelled, as far as phenomena and these legends are concerned? What first-hand experiences have you had with these legends?
So with our first ever episode, our Hell's Tunnel episode, we had, I don't know, I can only describe it as it was a dark, 8-foot-tall shadow figure that was darker than the darkness. I could vividly see it through, as a dark shadow in the darkness. So that, I mean, obviously that's, kind of, and I always joke with people that, we're kind of a primary cryptid show, but we've made our start ghost hunting. But that to me was kind of our really strange, occurrence. And then when we were filming our episode out at Lake Pepin, we kind of had an unusual wake pattern appear against the current. We tracked it for probably a minute and a half, and then it disappeared. We were the only ones on the lake that day. We were nowhere near where we saw it, so that was very weird. Our whole team saw it. We could see with our naked eye from the distance, and so it was pretty prominent on the lake. And then, we've had some things, that we have never shown that are pretty strange. We were doing some research kind of with the Wisconsin Dogman, Beast of Bray Road stuff back in, actually it was just this last year, and we came across a pretty large, I should say it wasn't just one, it was a whole set of very large canine footprints that we couldn't explain. Very deep. We casted it. I have it here. It's. I don't know. It was probably our craziest physical evidence to date that we've ever found. I've had it sent off to some people that said it looks, pretty prominent to your typical gray wolf, which to me is good because that kind of coincides with, people could just be seeing a gray wolf standing up, or something on its hind legs and attributing that to the stories of these dogmen. But yeah, we found so many of those tracks, so it was definitely several of these animals. Yeah, those are probably my top 3 strangest things so far.
Yeah. I must say, I don't think I've ever run into any dogmen.
There's still time.
Oh, yeah. No, certainly the Beast of Exmoor in England in 1989, that was something else. But Alexander, you're always in the thick of these things. What have you experienced? I mean, I know the answers personally, but what have you experienced?
Right.
Share with our listeners.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've never seen anything I could definitively say was a cryptid or anything like that. I've just seen a number of times either strange lights in the woods. We saw that both, Paul, in Pennsylvania the first year I went in 2018.
Yeah, we saw
I've
those
seen what I
ourselves.
can only describe as a UFO in Northern California, near where the Patterson-Gimlin film was taken back in 2015 or 16, I believe. I've seen, obviously, the UFO in Pennsylvania that we saw, which was by far the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Then I've had other experiences that, while I can't say are definitive, are interesting. So wood-knocking type experiences in New Hampshire and in Ohio. And even just this last summer, I had sort of an interesting encounter in an area I frequent where we had something kind of walking around the woods all night around our camp. Left the audio recorder out, and we got phenomenal wood knock and response type noises, and this is something that's described with Bigfoot behavior. I'm not saying that's what it is, but it's just very interesting. And subsequently in that area this past winter, during the midst of the coronavirus, I would spend a lot of time in these woods here in New Hampshire instead of having to drive to the Boston area for work every day. I'd have a little bit of extra time, and I'd head out into the woods, and I started encountering, especially after dark, something would knock type noises. And then I actually became friends with a property owner in the area who has had Bigfoot activity on his property for decades, and friends of mine with local research groups have also encountered things in this area. So it's interesting. I haven't had anything definitive happen. I'm not claiming that's Bigfoot, but it's interesting that it's all kind of happening in the same area. So I'm just sort of cautiously going forward and making sure I write down all my observations, or if anything is happening, audio recording, that sort of stuff, just to see if anything interesting may turn of it. I mean, it could just be other wildlife. I've run into moose and other animals in that area, and that's just an amazing experience unto itself, let alone something stranger. So going forward, we'll see. But I think with these new episodes that we'll be doing this summer for the show, I think during the Pukwudgie episode we actually had an experience where we heard something that sounded like a wood knock, right, Nash? And
Oh yeah.
And we were like, oh, is this going to turn into like a Bigfoot thing now, where on the search of one thing and something else happens? And I think it turned out to actually be some sort of a machine or something in the distance. There's a construction site nearby, but it was like 11 p.m. on a Saturday night, frigid cold weather. So it was very strange to have that happening during that time period. But it was clearly metallic once we heard it multiple times. But that just opened up another kind of interesting avenue, I guess, for us to wonder doing that at 11.
Yeah, having a little issue with your audio there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, it was kind of breaking up there. It seems better now. Ben has a question.
Yes, as always. So, I got distracted by the audio thing. I thought it was on our end. Spooked me. Anyway, so, between all of these phenomena so far and the research that you two have done, have you found any sort of patterns, similarities, anything that kind of connects, what you've experienced, say, Bigfoot in one part of the country versus, New Hampshire, or anything like that? Has there been any sort of differences, similarities, anything in that realm?
Patterns, maybe.
Yeah, pattern's probably a better word for it.
All right. Nash?
I think with, at least in the research standpoint, you always find those similarities between, things that kind of make you go, Mostly the ones that I kind of talk about are, the Sasquatch stuff, and how you pretty much have all of these isolated cultures all over the world that have their own Bigfoot legend and pretty much describe the exact same thing, having never spoken to each other or known about each other. And I think that with that, it kind of lends a little more credibility to the possibilities of some of these, Sasquatch sightings and stories maybe having some truth to them as being a unidentified animal. And then obviously, the lake monster stuff kind of blew up, and everyone kind of had their own Loch Ness for a while. And but in terms of like similarities and stuff, I think my main one that I usually kind of speak about is the Bigfoot stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. I would agree. I think that's one of the things that strikes me as, especially being very interested in the Bigfoot phenomena, is hearing reports from New Hampshire or New England that sound very similar to something that happened to somebody in Oregon in the 1970s or wherever else the case may be. That's very interesting. But I think just the consistency of kind of the responses people have to a lot of these phenomena. Now, saying that, we obviously haven't gone to some of the locations we're planning on going to just yet because we're in production, but I have a feeling that we're going to get that similar sort of thing where people in a town or in a local area have descriptions of something they can't explain, right? And it doesn't matter if it's a lake monster or, more Bigfoot type thing. There's very similar sort of attitude, perhaps. Some people write it off. Some people are all for it, right? Some people totally believe it. Some people are totally skeptical. I think you're going to experience that with whatever mystery you look into, and I think that's what's so great about what we're doing here is, so I'll just list off what we have planned for this first season. So obviously the Pukwudgie, which is a very unique story, as you mentioned, in the New England area. It isn't really present in that many other places. Sure, there's stories of fairies and little people, menahunes, all over the world, but the Pukwudgie is definitely a Massachusetts, New England story. The second creature will be the Mogollon monster of northern Arizona's Mogollon Rim, which is more of that classic Bigfoot type creature. Then we have Champ of Lake Champlain, which is an aquatic monster, obviously something that I've covered in depth. And the last one is the Rougarou, which is the classic werewolf dogman sort of story in the swamps of southern Louisiana. So as I mentioned earlier, I think that there's so much different terrain here and so many different factors just from an environmental standpoint that each case is unique, but each cryptid is very unique. They're not just all Bigfoot type animals or lake monster type animals. You have a little bit of everything, and I think we'll definitely see some crossover perhaps in just the way that locals talk about it, the attitudes people have towards it, even though they are so unique. So I'm beyond excited, and I think it's going to be awesome, and we're going to be doing some great work and definitely putting our lives in risk maybe at some times, but as we mentioned earlier, safety first. That's very important.
Your swashbuckling life. Yes, we're going to ask you, I guess your psychic powers are pretty good today, Alec. I was just about to ask you what the future held for the production series.
Well, I think that we exist in a time and a place that is it allows us to be able to go to these places more easily, acquire equipment more easily. You don't need a big budget production company behind you to be able to, fund expeditions to, not just like, the continental United States, or, you could just go wherever you want, really, and be able to, examine these reports, talk to the people there, and it's much more accessible now than it has been in, the last decade or so. And I think that, you're both of you have perfect timing, right? Because now is like the time when we can all kind of get together and research more effectively and be able to access everything we weren't able to access, 10 years ago even, with the same degree that we have now. And it's both a blessing and a curse, but at the same time, there's a lot of really great research that can come out of this initiative. So I got to give you both kudos for that, because there is that sort of zeitgeist of the time where we're able to, as younger generation, be able to try different things, do new techniques of investigation, and be able to see what works. Test the testament of our past. And see, how can we improve on this? What more can we get out of this besides, we don't know. We got samples. That's it. What can we do better? So I guess my final question would be is what can we do better?
Well, I think we definitely benefit from Alex and I have definitely we're on the same age, so we've grown up researching similar things and seeing how other people have conducted themselves and conducted these investigations and their own research, and we can kind of take what didn't work for them and apply it to our own stuff, so that way we're not wasting our time doing something that was proved to not result in any sort of evidence or whatnot. And I think in terms of what we can do better, I think we just, as a community, we just need to be better. I think, Alex and I are pretty good at staying out of everything, but there's a lot of people in the community that are not. And, I think everyone in this community is out there for the same goal, at least, on the surface, of finding evidence of these creatures and bringing light to these stories, and I think if we all can just get along, I think that would really change things in a whole, and maybe help some people research better because they're not trying to one up the next guy.
Yeah.
All right. Just before we run out of time here, I just wanted to point out one thing. The term tree knocking, some people might not know what we mean, but it's believed that Bigfoot will occasionally communicate with one another by picking up logs and banging them on trees. It could be Bigfoot. It could also be our colleague Shane Searway, who has been known to do that in Pennsylvania in his enthusiasm for our work there, and that's the sort of thing. So,
what's interesting, if I could just add, just a quick on that, chimpanzees actually have been observed using wood knocking as a form of communication.
That's right.
And they're in two locations. So that's what's interesting is that people in North America, where we're the only great ape that's supposed to be here, right? People describe this behavior. So that's just something interesting to note.
Well, that's true. Well, I'm here. I'm very happy to be today, of course, with my son Ben, my honorary son Alec, and Nash. Behave yourself, and we'll see. So anyway, thank you, gentlemen, for being with us, and we look forward to seeing the future of your excellent work, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
All right. So let's get to our announcements here. Sadly, we have received word, as we said last week, that the 2020 Exeter UFO Festival has been canceled. But this great event, sponsored by the Exeter Area Kiwanis Club to raise funds for local children's charities, will be back stronger than ever, I'm sure, in 2021. And we'll be back with our live panel broadcast from the Exeter Town Hall next year. Now,
alrighty, assuming that things are at least semi-normal by October, hopefully, we plan to be back at the Greater New England UFO Conference in Leominster, Massachusetts on Columbus Day weekend. My dad is scheduled to be the keynote speaker to mark his 50th work anniversary in paranormal research.
Yes, and there has been some discussion that could be done digitally, but I should say virtually, but we will let you know as we receive information on this. And, of course, the people who speak at that conference, it's going to be a lot of our good friends here from the show, including one of our guests today, certainly Aleksandar Petakov. Ben and I will be there, Shane Searway, and a lot of great people will be there, and Joe Citro from Vermont.
Ah, yes,
as
the
well
Bard
as
of the Bazaar.
The Bard of the Bazaar.
Yes.
All right. So check out our books along with those of our other co-hosts at our show website, BehindTheParanormal.com. So far there has been no disruption of that site that we're aware of, but it is migrating to a new host. So if it's down, just give it a day, and I'm sure it'll be back up. But so far, so good. You can also find out more about the show, our many cases over the years, and some of our 850, or more than that now, broadcasts from CBS Radio and from here on WON and other sources from the last 12 going on 13 years. And those can also be found on the major podcast platforms, iTunes, etc. They're pretty much all over the place, and they're available for you to listen to.
Yes, and if you do happen to listen to us on iTunes, please be so kind as to give us a rating, leave a review. Helps us grow our show and helps us kind of get out there. I mean, we're out there in many different places, so if that's not your particular cup of tea, we are all over the place. There are also links to several charities that we have adopted on the show, including USA Cares, Canadian Veterans Advocacy, Helping Haiti's Orphans, Youth Mentoring Connections in Los Angeles, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America, and the Sisterhood of Ground Zero, along with the Milk Fund here in northern Rhode Island.
We should add that these are charities we have vetted very, very carefully. We know the people who run them, and when you donate to them, the money goes where it's meant to, and not necessarily for administration, etc. Particularly help for Haiti's orphans. I've been to Haiti. It is very disconcerting to see the poverty, and these are children who were orphaned pretty much during the earthquake in 2005 there, and people here from Rhode Island actually run this charity. They're people of faith, and they do a wonderful job running an orphanage down there. And I haven't been to the orphanage, but I know people who have, and it's just a wonderful thing to do. So, Ben, what do we have for next week?
So next week, June 28th, well, it's almost July.
Time flies.
We'll bring you Jim Willis, a historian who's convinced that there are some very bizarre factors in human history that are being suppressed. Now that's one of my favorite subjects.
There you go. We leave you today with a thought from the 13th century Persian poet and theologian Rumi, one of my favorite guys. You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life? I'm Paul Eno.
I'm Ben Eno, and we have a few seconds here, so thank you for listening to us. And, as always, happy Father's Day to my father, who actually has probably been one of the biggest role models in my life, and I appreciate all the work that you've done over the years, and it's a pleasure knowing you, Dad.
Oh, thank you, Ben. Thank you, and happy Father's Day to all fathers out there.
And I'm Ben Eno, and thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we shall see you next time. Everyone be safe. And we'll see you next time on Behind the Paranormal.
Return to this radio frequency, 100.